Thank you for coming on today, James.
Yeah, my
Yeah,
pleasure.
thanks. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
So we talked like a month and a half ago, and you were telling me about how you had an atypical path to where you're at today. And so can you just kind of tell us a little bit about what got you into computer science in the first place, some of the first jobs you had, and where you're at now?
Yeah, so in that regard, my childhood is probably like a lot of kids my age and just younger, in that I wanted to be involved with video games because that was kind of the cool thing for kids. And literally, like, my career path started because one of my friends in like 6th grade was basically said, I'm going to make video games, and so that means I need to be a computer programmer. And because he was doing it, I was like, okay, that's cool, I'm going to do that too. And I kind of shelved that concept and just said, I'm going to do that. But it wasn't until college that I actually got into like computer science and kind of had to start exploring what that actually meant. In hindsight, I probably should have looked it up sooner to understand the space. But such as it is, I kind of meandered my way through blindly, through trial and error, and got into computer science, dabbled in animation at Brigham Young University, found a program that offered kind of a hybrid of being in computer science, but being involved in graphics and visuals and animation, and studied my course through that way, which led to a job out of college at a game studio at BioWare as a programmer. It was complete luck in that I knew somebody who had previously graduated from my same program that had a job, and that's pretty much the only way I got into game development and into programming. Is you pretty much have to know somebody on the inside, especially as a new college grad. And so that's what kind of got me into the industry and got me started doing .NET tools development, and working what I thought at the time was going to be a dream job. And it was good, but it was all kind of, that's how it all kind of aligned there, and got me into programming and got me exposed to that world of technology.
Nice. Yeah, that is a great background. And then something else that was a highlight that I noticed from our conversation was that it was really important to you. You wanted to do developing, but you also wanted to work with the people side of things. And
Yep.
so you've kind of found a way to marry those two.
Yeah, being a developer and programmer at BioWare, I enjoyed working with the tools and technology, but I realized in that time that what I enjoyed more was the human element, was delivering the results. I took great joy in being able to showcase, share, and help just deliver and solve problems for who, at the time, it was the artists and designers at BioWare. I was building tools internally. And that's the part that I really enjoyed, not necessarily the technology of building. And so after my stint at BioWare, I kind of started looking for how I could evolve that career, being involved in tools and technology, but work in that human element. And that's what took me ultimately to National Instruments, and then Xamarin and Microsoft, where I started moving into software success, software support, technology sales, and ultimately at Microsoft ended up as a program manager, and now at Epic as a technical account manager. So it kind of really has been that moving along the different paths, and moving to the business side with sales, moving to the support side with software support, and then again, kind of bouncing between those two realms.
So you said that you wish you had maybe done a little bit more research, or just that maybe that should have been something on your mind before you just decided that was your degree. What would you recommend for people who are trying to figure out their educational path right now?
Be proactive. And again, it's easy to say with hindsight, but in today's environment, with just the prevalence of technology on the internet, if you're interested in technology in general, there's no reason to not just jump online, start searching and self-educating. Something that I've said a lot, that I wouldn't say it's controversial, but it's definitely something to consider, is you don't necessarily need to go to school studying computer science to get into programming, because all of the tools you need really are free. All of the education and material you need is found on the internet. I mean, you're talking about an ecosystem that was built by programming and technology. All of the information you want and need is there. So if you have the diligence and the willpower to just educate yourself, everything you can find is there. Even if you want, in my case, to work in games, engines are free. There's free tutorials, free information. And so if you can take time to just set aside that interest and start looking around and just poking around and experimenting and leveraging the information that's there, you'll start getting a sense of what you like, what you dislike, what works, what doesn't. And I think it really can drive your decision making and help save time. And in my case, I had kind of reactively make decisions on the fly because I was in college spending money on tuition and things, and had to then eventually graduate and it wasn't until even after I graduated that I understood, okay, I enjoy tools, I enjoy software sales, and I could start making more proactive decisions to fulfill those interests.
And I know you and Justin talked last time too about how you could even perhaps not take like a traditional educational path, but in lieu of that, you'd build a portfolio of things that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. If you really want to get into like the true development side of things, get online. There's great tools with like GitHub, lots of open source projects that you can contribute to. And if you don't even want to do that, start writing code and start just putting your code into places that people can view. Just like artists and designers have portfolios that they share with potential employers, if you have a GitHub repository or some sort of code suite that you can share that you can send to a potential employer that they can look at, this is what I've built, this is what I've developed, they can get a sense of what your skills are at. And I would say really make sure it's your own. It sometimes get overlooked, but don't use like a college group project that you did unless you can really spend the time to highlight, these are the systems that I implemented, or this is the impact I had. If you submitted a few lines of code to a large code project, don't say that you wrote the code project. Really make it your own and either build it entirely yourself or make sure you highlight specifically, these are the things I did and this is how I contributed. And sometimes it is a few lines of code, but own how and why and what you got to do and how you submitted. And the more you get involved, the easier it'll be to just build that reputation.
That's great advice. So a lot of people, I think, they think they're not very technical and may have a hard time actually breaking in. Can you kind of talk to us about how long did it take you to learn your first code relatively proficiently? How much time did you actually put in each day? Because I think a lot of people think like programming takes computer science 4-year degree, but honestly, I know it takes a lot less to do, but they really have a hard time just jumping in and learn. So can you kind of tell us what you did to kind of learn your first code? How long did it take? What was your routine for that?
Yeah. So for me, I would classify myself under that kind of slower learner space in terms of just getting it to work. Learning how to code is like learning a new language or learning music, and it's learning the syntax and everything. And for me, I didn't start coding until, again, I went into college, and probably my first year of coding, the first couple classes I took, it didn't click. And I didn't really go in understanding what I was getting into. But I'd probably say my second year going back and digging into, it was like my second or third actual programming class, sitting down and actually taking time to understand of just doing the work and talking with friends who understood better. And in many ways, that idea of pair programming, getting involved with those kinds of things really helped me start to understand how programming worked. And again, I don't consider myself the most deep technical of programmers, but it's to a level of functionality where I can read code, I can write code, I can work with surface level systems, understand what's going on without necessarily being able to, build an operating system from scratch. Enough to be dangerous. And that's it kind of depends. Like, people can think themselves not technical, but it's always beneficial to have some level of understanding and even a foundational level of how things work, what a class is, what a method is, how information is passed, or what a REST API is. That's learning programming. And if you can interact and learn that level and it's relevant to your job, that can bring a lot of value. So for the people that say they're not technical and can't understand it, there are levels of depth that you need to go. You don't have to be a deep level system architect. You can just be very high level understanding the basics of writing hello world, and that can be sufficient. And something like that honestly can take an afternoon or maybe a week if you're only spending a couple of hours a day. But depending on where you want to go, again, the resources are there. And if you're willing to spend the time, it doesn't have to take a lot of investment to get return back.
Yeah, that's pretty great. And kind of following off of that, We have the experience aspect, kind of teach yourself. Are there any industry certifications specific for programming and coding that really stand out that a lot of employers are really looking at to verify, like, this is something that we want you to have so you understand like how it works and everything to verify your knowledge, basically?
Yeah, this is where I'm going to say it really depends on the industry that you're looking at, because it can vary from job to job. It can vary from industry to industry. For example, for me, when I was working at Xamarin worked in mobile application development, and it was its own C# based framework. And we worked with a lot of customers and sold licenses to customers that wanted to build mobile applications with Xamarin. And so we had our own training and certification. So for employers that work with Xamarin, having a Xamarin certification was kind of an instant way to get attention by those employers. You're going to find a lot of those things. And it really, I would say there are some industries where it's required, like, if you want to teach, you need a PhD, regardless. There's things like that. If you're interested in tools and technology, learn languages that are common, get C# certification, or learn databases, learn online systems. Really big today is going to be things like cloud services. So just understanding how Azure or Google Cloud or AWS work. You can dig into all of those things, and it's more going to be what is relevant to your job, but also things that you find interesting. Because I've known developers that have no college education, no certifications, but are very, very successful because they know the industry space. And it's just because they live it and breathe it and work in it. Again, building that portfolio. So there's a number of avenues you can take. I would say do the ones that are interesting to you, but also do the ones that are potentially have relevance to the space that you're looking at.
All right, it's really, really informative. And one more question kind of off of that. You were talking about kind of learning from other people and how they understand it. I think some people starting out, maybe they're younger in high school, maybe they haven't gone to college or have this network. Where's some good places that, I know we know LinkedIn's a pretty good place, but that's kind of broad, but are there specific places, community forums that that people can connect with people to kind of help them understand better, or meet up for places where they can meet up, and these events that you've gone to that would be good for these people to go to get a better understanding from people?
Yeah, so there's a couple of avenues. GitHub is definitely the first one. GitHub is like the central social community of just code, open source, everything. You can definitely build a reputation there. If you're looking at, again, specific technologies and industries, they have their own communities. From my experience, the game developer community, you have Unreal, you have Unity, you have a lot of these that have built social sites and systems. I would also look at some of the online training programs, things like Pluralsight or Udemy or LinkedIn Learning. They offer free courses and training, from what I can tell, that you can get into and involved in to teach and educate yourself. And then just look up developer meetup and just search for it, because most major areas, most major cities, especially across the US, are going to have a variety of focused meetup groups. You're going to have game developer meetups, .NET user groups, Google user groups. Just sometimes it's around programming languages, sometimes it's around technologies. Take the time to just do the research. You'll be able to find whatever you want. And especially if you're a high school and you're showing up to some sort of programming user group, probably you'll need to bring a parent, but you'll make a lot of connections instantly. And then especially if you're younger, find friends it doesn't take much time on the internet to find tutorials about how to do things. Kind of a simple example is every year on the holidays, there's something that they do called Advent of Code. That's a website that creates basically programming challenges that you can do every single day for essentially the Christmas holiday for December. That's a fun way just to get involved in programming, and there's a community that builds up around that. Find those little things. There's the game jams that happen on various websites that you can get involved in. So based on your interests, a little bit of searching can go a long way finding these things. It's kind of too much in many ways.
Yeah, I think that's where some of us get flooded. There's just so much going on. We're not quite sure where to start. But with summer coming for high school students and maybe some college students, this could be a good time. It's way too hot to go outside. Just stay in and look up some of these resources and see what they can learn over the course of the summer.
Yep. I mean, for me, for me, being able to, I like programming to the point where I can prove out something and I can see it working, right? I just need the proof of concept, and that's the level of technology depth that I go into. So that's the rewarding part. I mean, when I was kind of learning and trying to expand my skills, at the time BYU offered free just kind of technology manuals in a digital library. And I downloaded one on like Windows graphics and just started working through page by page, following the lectures and the labs. And just, it was many ways just copy paste code. But for me, that was educational, just to kind of work through the problems, see how the things work line by line, and just see the results. And like, that was a valuable learning exercise. So for people that are wanting to spend a project over the summer, I would say find something simple like that. Find a simple, small thing that you can do, that you can accomplish, and really scope it down to make it simple. Some people will say, I'm going to build a game over the summer. Honestly, most people will fail at that. But if you say, I'm going to figure out how to, load up a figure and move them in a 2D environment, okay, that's more reasonable. Look up graphics programming and basics in games. Like, find some simple things you can do. And for me, again, find a manual that you can just flip through page by page just to see what the results are. You can learn a lot that way.
Yeah, that's really informative information, especially the community forums and kind of how you talked about going through the manuals and everything. So, yeah, I think that's all great information, especially the community forums. I think a lot of people, they just honestly they kind of need a mentor, I feel like, to really motivate them and tell them how things work, to give that base knowledge, and not everyone really has that. So that's extremely helpful, and I'll definitely try to get some links for that. But do you kind of have any last words for our viewers, and maybe some big things you want them to take away?
Make it a social experience. I think I've found I'm a lot more successful when I do programming projects, or just when I'm involved in technology, if I'm doing it with somebody. There are things that you bring to the table, and there are things that friends, coworkers, acquaintances bring to the table as well. So, if you do it online, great. Try and connect with people to do it. If you've got a couple of friends locally that you all are interested in, you'll find that you'll make more progress together. And some people will work on it more, some people will work on it less, but the sum will be greater than the individual effort. So I'd probably say that's something that's undervalued a little bit in the technology space, that people look at, oh, I'm looking for a super programmer. I think it's more valuable if you can learn how to create a community effort and build something together and learn how to contribute with people. You'll be more motivated, you won't get stuck as often, and you'll have that kind of group mentality. That's probably the big thing I would say, is if you're going to look at a project, either find a friend locally, there's somebody, find a user group to ask. If you're a high school student, you show up at a user group and just say, hey, I'm looking for ideas for a mentor. I would be shocked if someone wasn't willing to at least give you some direction. Or find a community forum, find a group that you can bond with, that you can work with. Really look at that social aspect, because that's where things get done.
Awesome. Great words of advice for, the kids that are just getting into summer. And definitely that would be so much more fun and engaging for everyone, and give kids maybe some of those soft skills too that employers are looking for more and more these days.
If you're a developer with a personality, and I say that if you are a developer that can engage with other people and express yourself, it's actually shocking how often that doesn't happen. And it's really valuable when they can. Again, kind of like being someone who doesn't necessarily write code all day, but can speak technical, which is where my career path has kind of led more. The more technical I am, the more valuable I am, but it's not a core requirement. If you are a developer that can engage with, your coworkers, engage with your customers, understand how to convey that aspect of what is it you need me to build, what is it that are challenges, that can go a huge, huge way to help you just be more successful.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for joining us, James. It was so good to chat with you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.